Okay, welcome back, everyone. It's week 1, day 1. We are on the second lecture, more HTML. And I'll be doing a demo of how to create this page using HTML. Okay, so let's go ahead and start thinking about what we'll need here in order to create this page. The first thing that I see here is an H1 tag. Well, actually, the first thing is the name of this title at the very top. So we have a couple things to approach. Let's go ahead and create an HTML file. Right here I have Visual Studio Code. Call this one portfolio. Okay, I also noticed that there is a way that we have been organizing our files that is not correct. So let me go ahead and demonstrate how it should be done. Here I have this folder, HTML projects. Inside, I want to create the portfolio page. So what is this? It's called portfolio content. So I'll call this folder portfolio content. Okay, now that I've created this folder, now I want to open it. Okay, there should be several different folders containing the names of the project, and they should all contain their own HTML files. So if your HTML files don't live in a specific folder unique to their name, you're not doing it correctly. You have to create a folder, and for each folder, then you create the index.html, and from there you start. Okay, not different file names named different things .html. Each folder having its own index.html. The reason we call this index.html is because if you have multiple HTML files in the same folder, the index is going to be loaded first. So we'll do the exclamation mark, enter, exclamation marks, enter. And here we have the boilerplate. So we know we want to change here, document to portfolio. And we want to do an H1 here. If I just type in H1, then enter, it'll create the carrots for me. So I will call this one programmer name. Okay. And I also wanted to introduce something else here. If I go to my extensions and type in live server, you can download an extension that will refresh anytime there's a change made to your code. So this one here, live server with the purple radio looking symbols here, radio waves. So if we right click our file and say open with live server, it'll pull up this server that as soon as I make any changes, I don't have to now refresh my browser. Okay, this is with an extension. So if I say 123 and I save it, it'll automatically make that change. I won't have to refresh my page. So just a shortcut to save you guys some time as you're working. The only thing is every so often it'll get frozen and you'll manually have to refresh it. Okay, so here's a live server. And I want to continue on with this page here. So I notice the next thing that I should have here is an image, a portfolio image. So what I want to do now is create a folder inside my folder called images. Okay, my images folder is going to contain all the images that I want to use for my page. Okay, I have a profile picture I want to use. And so if I go below my H1 now, and I say image, if I just type in IMG, it'll give me everything I need to enter to fill out the SRC in the alt. Okay, just image, enter, IMG, enter. Okay, the SRC is the location where that image is. I called it profile pic. So as long as we're in the same folder, this method I'm about to show you is going to always work for you. So you got to make sure your images folder is in the same folder as your index.html. Once we're in the SRC within quotes there, if I do /, it'll show me everything available at this level of the files. And I can click images, and within the images folder, I can click my profile picture. And alt, I'll say profile pic.
I have a question. I'm noticing these images are like PNG images. Is there an extension of an image that HTML won't work with?
They should work with JPEGs, PNGs, what's the other one? JPEG, PNG, most all image, even WebEx. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I prefer to stick to PNGs or JPEGs. But there's not that many image file types anyway. Okay, so here's my image. It's not that big, so I don't have to style it. If my image was too big, then I would have to somehow go into the styling properties and make some changes there. Okay, so here's my image. Now I want to stick in these images here, that GitHub profile image, a link, this GitHub profile image, another link, and so on. Okay. So there's a couple ways I can go about this. I can create a div that would hold all these three. And I think that's what I should do. Let's create a div. And this div is going to hold this row of image, my GitHub link, LinkedIn image, my LinkedIn link, and then this email image and that my email link. Okay, so I already have these images saved. I looked on the web for them. So I'm just going to drag them into my images folder. Okay, that's the GitHub one. That's the LinkedIn. That's the email one. And one more for an HTML symbol there. Okay, so now I'm in this image, in this div, and I want to create an image tag. Let's rename them and then look for it here. So I'll say this one is the GitHub one. So I'll rename this one. Okay. I'll say /images the one I named GitHub icon. And it's huge. That's okay. We can change the size. So what I could do, and I'm not encouraging you guys to do this. In fact, this is not the correct way to do this. This is why we'll be learning CSS tomorrow. If I want to make this image smaller, I'm going to have to give it some width and height to make it a definite width and height. Okay, so if I say style equals height, or if I say width 20 pixels, now I have that image at a width of 20 pixels there. Actually, I'm thinking maybe 40 is better. Okay. For now, this is the best we can do. Put styling inside the head tag of a certain tag property, certain element on the page.
Is the only reason you put width because it's like a square image?
Yeah, if you affect the width, it'll also affect the height as well.
Okay.
Okay. So this is not the official way to do it. Okay. This is a training wheel that I'm going to rip off right away tomorrow morning. Okay, so this is putting a style tag in the page itself. There's another way to add style to the page, which is by going here into the head and typing style. Okay, and in here, you can then affect all the images. If I say all the images, or if I say, oh, not yet, actually, I don't want to affect anything yet. This is fine the way it is. So I have the image there and I want to put some text next to it. So right next to this image here, in fact, below it, I can say A. If I type in A and then press enter, it's going to ask me for a link. I'm going to put a hashtag in there because I don't have an actual place I want to link it to yet. I'll do that later. And I want to put my GitHub as the link. Okay, so there it is, my GitHub. If I wanted to actually add my GitHub, I could put the link there. Grab the link from here, and I'll put it in the place where that hashtag was there. Now, if I click this link, it'll take me there. I want to add a couple more now. I want to add one for the LinkedIn and one for my email. Okay, and they're all on the same line. And here's one thing that we'll be learning. Image tags and A tags are all inline elements. So they don't take up their whole row. They all are living within the same row, which is the div that they've inhabited. So if I want it all to appear on the same line, I have to know the difference between which tags are inline versus which tags are block elements. Okay, so these in particular, the A tags and the image tags, they are inline. Okay, so let's add some more. We've got an image tag. I'm going to just put a placeholder SRC, and then what I want there is the LinkedIn image. So LinkedIn icon. And let me find it in my folder here. This is the LinkedIn. I'll do /images, LinkedIn, and it's huge. So I'll copy that same style tag. And I put it in. Okay, now it needs another A tag. So I'll do A enter. I won't dig out my LinkedIn, so I'll just put out a hashtag there as a placeholder. And take a look here. It says my LinkedIn. Okay, just need one more. My email. Okay, so I think this is the email one. Nope, this one. Let's do /images. Look for the email. And the alt, type in email icon. And there we are. I just need to put that definite width on there. This should affect the width and the height. Because if you grab the width or the height, you're affecting both. So now I need to put that email link. I'll say here, my email. I think I can actually put in my email. Yeah, I have to put in a special link for it to open the default email loader to email me. Okay, we can figure that out later. Right now, we just want to get the look of the page. Okay, now I want to get this technologies table. So when I look at this technologies table right here, what I notice is that it has this title technologies. And this section here is bold, so it has a clear header section. So let's go ahead and create that. So below my div here that I created, it has all these images in the A tags. I'm going to click enter. Now I'm below the div. And I'm going to say href or h3 for technologies. H3. I decided H3 because it looks 2 levels smaller than this big one here. Technologies. Okay. I actually want a little break to add some space here. So a little bit more space between both areas. And maybe on the above this div as well. Maybe I'll add a break here as well. Maybe another one. Okay, now there's a bit of space there. Okay. All right, so we have our H3 technologies. Now we need to create our table. So we'll say here, table, enter. Inside our table, we want to create as many rows as necessary. So how many rows are in this table? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to say tr table row times 4. And it gives me 4 table rows. If I press enter, tab, enter, tab, enter, tab, enter, it'll open them up for me. Now each row here has how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns. So I'm going to say th times 5. That's going to be 5 columns for the head. And then in here, I'm going to say TD times 5. 5 rows for data.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
So when you did the H3 for technologies, why didn't you use a table header instead, or is that used for something different?
Table header is what we're going to use for the headers that say front end, Python, JavaScript, database. You see how at the top of the row it has a title for the related column?
Okay, all right.
Yeah. That's specifically for those columns. The H3 that I chose here is just a general header for anything. Could be anything else here. Just like social snakes is a header for this section. Contact me is a header for this section. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and create these headers and the data cells, and then we'll go ahead and do a status check right after this. Okay, so we'll do front end. So let's move this to the side so we can copy this easier. Say front end, Python, JavaScript, database, concepts. These are all on the table headers here. So now here they are, lined up in a row. Can't really tell the difference between each row, between each column, excuse me. Now we need to create the data inside here. So I have 5 rows of table data, 5 columns, excuse me. I'm going to put it inside each table row. So for the first row here, I have HTML, Django, Express, MySQL, Ajax. So let's fill that row up. We have HTML5, Django, Express, MySQL, Ajax. Let's take a look. Okay, there's our first row. Second row, CSS3, Flask, Mongoose, MongoDB, OOP. Let's check it out. Okay, we got our second row, or third row rather, our last row here. Bootstrap, unit test, React, an empty row. So we'll leave that one empty. The last one we say REST, rest. So we see here our table, skip that row there. Okay. Here's an opportunity to introduce how to style an element from the HTML. Again, we're not going to want to style elements inside the tags or in the HTML. In fact, we don't even need to style this at all. If you guys submitted this assignment without any styling, it would be completely fine because we didn't teach you any except for what I'm showing you now. Okay, so I'll target the table, table header, and the table data row. And I'll say padding 10 pixels, border 1 pixel, solid black, border collapse. I won't tell you what these things mean yet, but this is what's going to give that look to the table. Okay, talk more about styling tomorrow. I just want to introduce, you can also style here from the header if you put a style tag in the header here. Okay, so you can put style tags in the tags, or you can put them in the header. And tomorrow we'll explain why there's a better way than the way I'm showing you here. Okay, so we have the table. We want to introduce lastly, well, not lastly, second to last, the social snakes here. So I think that should be another H3. So below this table, I'll do another BR tag, and I'll say H3. Here it should say social snakes. And we have a div. Oh, we have this image here, that HTML image. So we're going to have to load that now. Before we do that, let's look at our H3 here. Before we do that, let's do a status check. Let's just see how well we're following along. Does everything that I'm doing, does it make sense so far? Is it something that you feel like you could figure out for yourself, given the rules that we've introduced so far? Okay, cool. All right, then we'll continue. We have the social snakes. We'll include that image. All right, so here is our HTML image. We'll rename it HTML image. We'll search it in the src./images. HTML image, and then in the alt, I'll say HTML icon. Okay, let's look at what it looks like. So it didn't load. So something is broken here. Oh, it's kind of there. Oh, it's so big that it took up the entire page. So we need to add some size to it. I'm going to take it from here, and I'll just stick it in the head here. And there it is. I'll say border 1 pixel, solid black. Okay, so we have that box there for the HTML. Now we have a p tag that says social media app made in Python. So let's go ahead and do that. P, enter, social media app made in Python. Now we have also two A tags. Do you see how they're on the same line? If we want them to be on the same line, we have to put them inside the P tag. So the rule is you can have inline elements inside block elements, but block elements cannot be inside inline. Okay, so we'll say href, and A tags are inline elements. P tags are block elements. So we can have A tags within P tags. We cannot have P tags within A tags. So I'll say code. Space. And then we have another A tag. So I'll just copy this one and I'll change the contents. So I'll change it to deployed. Deployed. Now, if I take a look, it looks just the same. All I did here was create a P tag and put the A tags inside the P tag. All right, last section here, the contact me section. Only about 4 more things here. One more H3 that goes here. Then I have a row here of inputs, a text box input, and then this button. So I'll create the H3. Let me create a break tag. I'll create an H3. Say contact me. There I am. Okay, contact me. In fact, I think it's a little bit too much. With one BR, goes that far? It's a lot. Okay, this will be better. Contact me. Okay, now I want to put some P tags. So the first P tag I'll create here, I'll create it in a div. And I'll say, actually, the way I want to do this is the way that the platform shows with the labels here. So I want to go to forms and find a section here that has the label already. See how this here has name, your name. This one is supposed to have something similar. So I'll take this label and input, and I'll change it according to what I need. So I'll go to portfolio content, and I'll go inside this div I've created. And here I am. Okay, and format my document. Okay. So let's take a look at what this looks like. It should say name. I want to delete the placeholder. Here I am. I have this label for name and the text input. If I give it an ID, it'll be more specified here. So I'll say ID for name. And then label here, I'll say for equals name. So now it's directly linked. And our portfolio has an email spot right next to it. So I'll go ahead and copy this. Paste it below. Now see how they're on the same line. It's because they're within the same div. These are all inline elements within a block element, the div element. Okay, so I'll change this to email. Change this to email. Change these to email. Okay, now I have the email form part. Okay, now I want to do two more things here, the message and the button. So who can tell me what I should be using for this area here, the message? Anyone have any suggestions?
Text area.
Text area. Exactly. So I'll say outside this div, I'll go here to the text area in the forms. Text area, I'll take this here, paste it in. Okay, that's my text area. Now I want to give it a label, so I'll give it an ID. And what does the platform say to call it? Message. So we'll call this the message. Say label for message. And here we are. If we want to add some spacing, then we'll add a break. Oops. We'll add a break right before the area we put our label and text area. That gives us that little bit of space. If we wanted to make message go to the top here, just like it is in this example, we'd have to do some more styling, which I don't want to introduce yet because that's not the point of this lecture. So the last thing we'll need to do then is add this input. We'll say input, enter, type, and we'll change it to who knows the type it should be.
Submit.
Submit. And we'll say value equals send message. And here it's on the same line. That's because it's an input type. So I'll need to add a break to give it its own line. In fact, multiple breaks. Okay, so with this here, I've now finished this assignment. Okay, as you guys seen, it doesn't take more than an hour. We just need to know what tags we're working with. Lastly, we want to validate our code. So in case we made any mistakes, we're going to copy all of our code here, paste it in here, run the check, and no errors. Okay, all these are not errors, so we can ignore them. Okay, so what I'm going to introduce now is the difference between block and inline elements. Okay, there are certain elements that are block elements, and there are certain elements that are inline. So let's do some demonstration. I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call this folder inline versus block. And before I do that, let me restart the poll. I just want to make sure that we all understood how I created this portfolio page. If there's any specific questions, or do you guys feel pretty comfortable doing what I just did? Okay, looks like we just mainly need some practice. Okay, and Haral provided a nice little comment here. I should include this in the, for example, if you wanted to make it an email that would send to my specific email, in the href, you would put mail to, and then the email address. So that way, now that I've changed it, it'll open my default email app to use to send emails. So you can use this here as your default email sender. But the way to get that to open by default is by putting mail to : and then the email here. So thank you, Haral, for that. Okay, let's go ahead and continue the difference between block and inline. And that'll be the end of this session here. So block and inline. Block elements. Well, first let me open a new folder here. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I'll create here block inline. Okay, I've created an index.html. I'll say exclamation mark, press enter. And here we're going to start writing some inline elements. Okay, let's see the H1 and H2 together. If I look at my page here, I'll open this on a live server. Here we have hello world, goodbye world. Okay. If I make them H1, they'll take up their own row because they are by default blocks. Anything that is by default a block will create its own row. So that's P tags, H tags. But There are some inline elements, however. Look at this label and this input. These are all inline. They will not create their own row. Let's copy this below the H2. By the way, it doesn't matter how many indent space I put in my HTML. This doesn't determine the indent space on the view. So these are all inline by default. Labels and inputs are inline by default. P tags, block. They take up their own row. Okay. Span tags are inline. A div is a block by default. Every div will take up its own row. Okay, so if I say here, div, and I give some styling to this, I'll say style equals 1 pixel solid red border. The div will only take up the content that it needs. So this row, this one that I've given 1 pixel of a border, this div will separate the page at this point. Okay. If I filled this div with some content, for example, if I take this label and inputs and I put it inside this div, that div's height is going to stretch to fit all the content necessary. Okay, I can delete this now. So the div's height will take up the content necessary. That's why this red line now expanded. But in either case, it will stretch across the screen. That's because they will take up the full width of their container. But not so with inline. Inline will only take up the space necessary for the content it's taking up. So if I say a span tag, for example, hello world. Okay, this span, it's on another line because this div here that I've created has stretched it all the way across. So it has to be on a new line by default. But if I put something exactly similar next to it, even if I write it below in my HTML here, it'll still be on the same line. Hello world is on the same line as hello world because they're both span tags. If I create a div and I put a p tag in that div, or if I just create a p tag because a p tag is a block element. If I create a p tag, say hello world here, what's going to happen? It'll go on its own line because a p tag is a block element. So all I'm trying to enforce here is there's difference between block elements and inline. Okay, we're going to have to get used to knowing the difference. An a tag, is that inline or is that a block element? Who can tell me? A tag, inline or block?
Inline.
Yep,
Line.
that's right. What about a input?
Is that
A tag or
inline?
block? Inline. Okay. For today's assignment, it's not so important to know these differences. but definitely starting tomorrow, you're going to start understanding why I am enforcing this for you guys to know. Difference between block and inline. Okay. So with that, let me just take a survey here on if we know the difference between block and inline. And then we'll go ahead and end the lecture. If you guys don't have any questions. All right. So I'll stop the recording then. And let me ask you guys, how are we doing